My name is Don Lockman, and I have the privilege of being the president of Champlain College, where we are today. I'd like to welcome everyone to Champlain College and to today's presentation of the recommendations from the Vermont Financial Literacy Task Force. Before we begin today's press conference, I would like to thank the generous sponsors that have made the task force's work possible. The Association of Vermont Credit Unions, Champlain Investment Partners, Hansen and Doremus, KPMG, National Life Group, New England Federal Credit Union, TD Bank, United Way of Chittenden County, Vermont Association of Realtors, Vermont Business Roundtable, Vermont Student Assistance Corporation, and the Wyndham Foundation. Today you will hear 13 thoughtful recommendations from the task force on ways to improve the financial literacy of K-12 students, college students, and adults in Vermont. Financial literacy is very important to Champlain College and its student body. Increasing the personal finance knowledge of our college students has been a key goal of the college ever since we launched the Life Experience and Action Dimension program, also known as our LEAD program, in 2008. LEAD provides our students with a 4-year series of activities and experiences designed to develop life skills that are practical, meaningful, and useful that will serve our students throughout their lives. The LEAD program is a non-credit hour requirement that students must complete each year. If they don't complete the requirement, they are unable to register for classes the following semester. When we first launched it in 2010 for the class of 2012, the financial sophistication component of our LEAD program was viewed by the New York Times as being incredibly unique because it mandated training in personal finance as a college graduation requirement. Students at Champlain are required to take seminars on topics such as understanding credit, goal setting and budgeting, investing your money wisely, and buying your first car. Students are also given the opportunity to obtain their free credit report and credit score and receive one-on-one credit report counseling. In 2010, we also launched our Center for Financial Literacy, ably led by John Pelletier. The center's mission is to help improve the personal finance knowledge and skills of our citizens in Vermont and across the country. We believe that the center serves as a national example and leader in the attempt to create more financially literate nation. Its research and K-12 educator training initiatives have been recognized by the White House and various national media outlets. The creation of the center and the launching of the task force are examples of our community service dedication to Vermont. We believe that the recommendations of this task force, when implemented, will play a significant role in increasing the financial skills of students and adults throughout our state. As the Great Recession has shown, a strong, healthy, and vibrant Vermont economy requires financially literate citizens. We now know that due to our nation's poor personal finance knowledge and skills, we experienced record high foreclosure rates, mortgage defaults, personal credit defaults, and bankruptcy rates. The Vermont Financial Literacy Task Force was launched in April by Champlain College's Center for Financial Literacy, and its important work has been managed by the center's director, John Pelletier. The work of this task force was led by its chairman, Bob Allen. Bob is the president and CEO of the Wyndham Foundation and was formerly the president and CEO of the Vermont Country Store. He was also, I'm pleased to note, former chairman of the Board of Trustees at Champlain College. I would like to thank Bob for his leadership and service in the task force. And Bob, would you please lead us through today's presentation?
Thank you, Don. As Don said, I'm the president and CEO of the Wyndham Foundation. For my friends in the audience, you know, I've had a life before that. I've only been there about 3.5 years. But my connection with the Center for Financial Literacy began several years ago when John approached the Wyndham Foundation for a grant to support the early initiatives of the center. The mission of the Wyndham Foundation is very broadly defined. Creating opportunities for economic development is clearly part of our mission. Enabling citizens to become financially literate and ultimately financially self-sufficient was clearly one way to help Vermont communities to become more secure. I viewed this as a unique opportunity to promote economic development statewide. The center has worked for several years educating teachers and gathering data on the status of financial literacy in Vermont and throughout the country. The report card for our state is not good. In fact, in a recent national test of financial literacy at the high school level, Vermont scored a D, far below the national average. Last April, John assembled a group of decision and policymakers from around the state to develop a series of recommendations to move financial literacy forward. We divided into 3 working groups, K12, college, and adult committees. I had the honor of serving as chair of the adult committee. The task force charge was clear and quite precise. Each committee had to work within the same two criteria. First, we must develop recommendations that would have a positive impact on a large number of Vermonters, and second, and most importantly, be actionable. The committees poured through mountains of research and reports from around the country. Each committee met face-to-face at least 3 times. We debated various approaches and eventually reached consensus on a group of actionable recommendations. Understanding that each group would likely develop many possible approaches, the committees were asked to limit their recommendations to a maximum of 5, not an easy task. The report you're receiving today has 13 recommendations and 1 overarching recommendation. John will be reviewing the overall task force recommendation toward the end of the presentation. I want to personally thank John for his vision and leadership throughout the process. Though not technically a member of the task force, John served ex officio on all committees and helped keep us focused on the timetable and on the task at hand. I would like to thank Linda Tarr-Whalen and Scott Giles for their leadership as chairs of the K-12 and college committees, and for all the committee members who worked long and hard during the past 6 months. Today, we're also honored to have with us State Treasurer Beth Pierce. I recall last fall, Beth, I was on my way to one of the adult committee meetings and hearing an interview with you on VPR in which you indicated that one of your top priorities, should you be reelected, would be to continue your department's initiatives on financial literacy. We're happy you were reelected, and we're happy you're able to join us today, so thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is a short video on financial literacy.
This task force report will be available on a website. The website is financialfunkvt for Vermont.org. So you can look at the report and web version. There are infographics. You can see the 3 infographics up front: one for adult, one for K through 12, one for college, and there's also this video that we have. So you can look at the report on the web as a web-based report, or you can download a PDF of the report. We're now going to hear the recommendations from the K through 12 committee, and if Linda Tarr-Whalen could come up. Linda's a consultant right now, a former distinguished senior fellow at Demos, and a former ambassador. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, John. Well, this is the first time those of us on the committee have actually seen the video. It's really very good. Makes the point extremely well. Thank you all very much for coming today, and particularly I'd like to thank the members of the K-12 committee. Many of them are here. John is going to introduce you later, but I just wanted to add a personal appreciation that you are here today. My first introduction to the problem and the issue of financial literacy for Vermonters was actually when I read the report that Vermont Works for Women did, which they interviewed young women all across the state. And one of their biggest problems going into the workforce or college was they said, we don't know about financial information. And so we're getting ourselves in trouble, and getting ourselves in trouble very early. So exactly a year ago, I chaired the task force for that came out of that report. Many of you here were actually part of that process. And we said, this is an essential issue. Well, John Pelletier and the center here at Champlain picked up the responsibility and then brought us together. So our corner of the world was K through 12. And our committee wants to say very clearly that this is not just a high school issue. We really believe that students all the way through the system need to begin to build their skills. I'm old enough to remember postal savings stamps that we did in elementary school to learn how to save. Those things are no longer with us. But there's a lot to do in the high school years. And actually our recommendations focus on the high school age group, the secondary school you saw the statistic here, only about 10% of the high schools in the state require financial literacy education as part of the graduation requirements. And that's a tempting thing to think, well, why don't we just mandate it? But the committee, knowing the long tradition of independent school districts and school boards in the communities here, and recognizing that there's a tough environment right now for schools, facing in many cases budget cuts, the school elections, the property tax goes back down again, pressures for Common Core, lots of changes in standards. We began to talk really very strongly about what is actually realistic. What could really happen soon. As Bob said, we were supposed to be impactful, but also to keep our heads out of the clouds. So I think that you will find that the recommendations are all doable, really actionable, and a roadmap of ideas that can get us to the point where students in this state have the financial education they need as a basic point through their high school years. You should know a little bit more background about this, and that is there is excellent information available at the national level that actually can be tailored by educators here. This is not one of those issues where it has to be developed from scratch. There really are excellent resources available. So our committee looked at that. We looked at what other states are doing. And when we're D, the other states are doing a lot that we could learn from. And we also decided that we would meet with the teachers who have been teaching financial literacy. And I think that that actually added the most, for me, certainly, to the whole conversation. Our committee had the leaders from various professional organizations, and from the principals organization, we had Keith, who actually was the person as principal of U32 that actually brought in the graduation requirement there for financial literacy. So we had real experts on our committee. And when we met with the teachers, I learned in detail that some of the teachers had incorporated this into social studies, some into economics, one even into calculus, which kind of blew my mind just a little bit. But there's ways to teach this throughout the curriculum, but there are some things that the teachers need and the schools need to make that happen. So here's what our recommendations are, and there are 5, and you have them in the report. First of all, we need to update the standards in this state because the personal economic standards essentially are incredibly limited. They don't have any real detail, and they haven't been modernized since the year 2000. So if we can update these standards then and mirror what's the best practice around the country, we'll have an opportunity to set the framework for all school districts. Secondly, we believe that we need to assure that all Vermont high school students, by the time they graduate, have financial literacy skills. Now, that's different than a mandate because there are, as a matter of fact, online courses through the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, so that if a school can't do this, some schools have this as an elective, but the students' schedules are pretty full and they can't necessarily find time to use this as an elective. There are online opportunities in this state. Thirdly, we believe there should be personal finance training opportunities for Vermont educators. We can't just assume that everybody's ready to teach financial literacy, whatever your field is. And this also includes the colleges that prepare teachers, because this is not part of the curriculum right now for the preparation of teachers in this state. Fourth, we believe that we should create an online clearinghouse of vetted and trusted financial literacy information, curriculum, exercises, activities, assessments, so that it's possible to build on those best practices rather than starting from scratch. Lastly, and this is an important part of our proposal, how do we make this happen? We're not going to do top-down. How do we get the energy from the bottom up to make change actually happen? And so we're very pleased to make a recommendation about establishing financial literacy grants for K through 12 schools and supervisory unions to launch new or materially improved programs. And we're very pleased the Vermont State Treasurer within her office has a Vermont Financial Literacy Trust Fund, which they administer. And so we're calling for a committee of experts to help develop the size of that fund and also what the process would be to encourage the school districts to move as quickly as possible. So here's the bottom line for me. Vermont students need and deserve this kind of education. And I would like to really urge parents, citizens, the media, to begin to ask the questions of the school district, the board, and the administrators to say, what are we doing in our community? There's a lot of place to go with only 10% of the schools right now having a formal graduation requirement. Because for me, this is an essential building block for 21st century life, whether the students are going to college or they're going into the workforce. So we're very hopeful that our practical, realistic roadmap is one that will see a difference for students in this state. Thank you.
So now we're going to have the recommendations from the College Committee. So if Scott Giles, the President and CEO of Vermont Student Assistant Corp, VSAC, could come up. Thanks, Scott.
Good morning and thank you. And I guess I'd like to kind of open up by, just thanking Bob and Linda for their leadership, and Beth Pierce, who's been a partner with us, both as a board member at VSAC and as the state treasurer, really helping us advance the cause of financial literacy. What I thought I'd do, just to kind of set the table a little bit and provide a little bit of context for these conversations, the process, every student, graduating from high school will need some form of education or training after high school, where once a high school diploma was both necessary and sufficient for being able to get a job that would allow you to earn a livable wage. That's no longer the case. And the process of applying and getting into education and training programs has become more complicated. And one of the themes that ran through our task force was the idea that we needed to help Vermont students and families really become good consumers of education. And it's easy to think about these issues and think that financial literacy is a problem that really only affects whether it's working class families or lower income families, but it's a challenge that cuts across all socioeconomic groups. And people that work with me have heard probably these two stories, but I'd like to tell two anecdotes that I think provide a context for the recommendations that they made. And one of them was a parent that came to me and told me this story. She came to me and said, my daughter went to Williams College and graduated near the top of her class and got into med school. And we helped her with her education at the undergraduate level, but paying for med school was really something that she herself was going to be responsible for. And as we were working through that process and taking a look at the grant aid that was available and the loans, she was shocked and horrified to discover that you had to pay a loan back and that the lender charged interest. And she said to me, what have we done wrong through all of this time that it has taken her until she was applying to med school to discover the mechanics of a basic loan. The other story that I'd like to tell you took place at one of our campuses, and a very, very enterprising financial aid officer that was very interested in making sure that their students really understood the student loan debt that they were taking out, pulled together a group of, I think, roughly 100 of their students. And they had folders for each one of them that had the amount of student loans that they had taken out to that point. And they asked everybody in the room to raise their hand if they knew how much they had borrowed to date. And the long and short of it was about 2 students raised their hand and got the number close to being right out of that, that number 100. And then in order to provide a teachable moment, the financial aid officer turned around and said, okay, how many of you know how long Kim Kardashian was married to Chris Humphries? And almost every hand in the room went up. And then they all looked around at each other and said, think about what we know that Chris Humphries, 72 days for those of you that were interested. everybody in the room knew that piece of pop culture, and nobody in the room knew or understood how much they had borrowed to date for their education. And what that tells us is that we have a significant challenge that we need to meet that really piggybacks off the challenges that were described in the K through 12 group. And one of the things that was wonderful about our group is that we had representatives from all college types and from all sectors. So we had a representative, and I think John is going to go through the names before, someone from academic support services, someone from admissions and financial aid, someone from the business side, someone from the research side, which gave us, I think, a really important perspective. And we had 4 recommendations that speak to those challenges that I described. The first one really was that all students attending Vermont colleges should have access to the financial literacy information and tools that they will need to succeed both in school and when they graduate. And the student loan piece is just one small part of that. The second one goes to one of the challenges that we have in Vermont, and that is that scale is always an issue for us. I think Champlain College and the work that John and Don have done is relatively unique, but most of our institutions recognize that financial literacy is critical, but not all of them have the resources that they can devote to building the programs that they need to put in place. So our second recommendation was that we create a center so that not every institution has to recreate the wheel, in a sense, that we can share resources, share training, share our knowledge of what works in educating students and preparing them both to succeed within college and to succeed when they graduate. The next one goes to how challenging it is for many students to make smart choices about that link between education and career. But it also speaks to some of the work that's been done at Champlain College and at some of our other schools, and that importance of sharing. And that is the idea of creating some form of a virtual career center, so that as students are making decisions about how much to borrow, what education program to go to, whether they should be saving more, they have both access to good information about what it is that they can expect to earn when they graduate, so that their financing decisions are linked in some rational way to what they believe their employment opportunities will be. But also we know that coming out of this recession, many students, graduate students, are struggling to get employment, and that the expansion of career services are going to be critically important to their success in managing their lives after graduation. And then the last item that we recommended was the creation of some kind of a child savings account pilot program. One of the things that's happened in several states, and John alluded to the low savings rate that we have in Vermont. Despite the fact that we have a 529 plan that's got tax advantages, we have relatively low participation rates, at least relative to where we should be. And there are places like the city of San Francisco, the state of Maine, where through some foundation support and some corporate support, pilots have been initiated where savings accounts were opened for every kindergartner or every baby that was born within the state. And what the research shows that is potentially powerful about these tools is that they create a way of communicating with parents. So the creation of the savings account and encouraging parents to start to save and family members to save is one part of it. But it creates the ability for us to have a financial literacy conversation and a college aspiration or training aspiration conversation with parents that is targeted towards them to give them the tools they need that are targeted towards the age of their particular students. And we're particularly excited about the prospect of trying to work something out that way. To meet the target of being actionable, there are several steps that we indicated that we were going to take. There will be several convenings throughout the course of the next year in which we will pull groups together to begin to have a conversation involving all of the colleges about how we develop a common set of financial literacy resources and tools. And we will be doing the same thing with the virtual career center program so that we can get the right stakeholders in the room to begin building it. And then we at VSAC have been interested in trying to create some pilots with college savings, and we will be looking to try and find a way to partner with folks to be able to initiate that. I'd like to close just by thanking, again, our group, Kelly Beckwith, Pam Chisholm, Dave Provost, and John Ryan for the work that they provided on this. we're excited. This is the first step in a journey that we'll all be taking together, and I'd like to thank them for their work and look forward to working with my fellow chairs to make this a reality. Thank you.
Bob, if you could come up with the adults' recommendations?
Be brief, right? Yeah, we're running a little behind, so I'll try to get to the recommendations pretty quickly. But I think they require some context. The adult committee had some real challenges. We're obviously economically diverse. We were demographically diverse, and we're also or geographically diverse. Spread out through the entire state. We didn't have a school that we could work with, so we had our challenges. So the adult committee, and there's some really scary data that we're working with too, and I'd like to some of them were alluded to in the video, but I'll review them very quickly. Again, less than half of Vermonters participate in an employment-based retirement plan, less than half. There are a lot of less than half numbers in the data. Also, only less than 50% of adults have, or more than, 50% of Vermont adults have a subprime credit rating, And only 36% of Vermont adults have a rainy day fund that would cover them for a minimum of 3 months, 36%. So I'm going to launch right in. We only have 3 recommendations coming from the adult committee, so I'll launch right into them. The first one is provide adults with a wide variety of learning opportunities when, where, and how they need them. We recommend that employers, schools, colleges, libraries, and nonprofit organizations create opportunities for adult citizens to increase their financial skills. This should occur at trusted places and with trusted content, and never include sales pitches or specific financial products or services. Today, research indicates that most Vermonters don't know how or where to access financial education, and few can distinguish quality programs from those that are not. For example, one of the things we might do, the Department of Libraries, Marty Reed is here, could work with public libraries around the state to sponsor programs for adults and include financial literacy in library program outreach programs. Marty's here with us today, and she was a member of the adult committee and helped formulate some of these recommendations. I also can envision employers taking an active role in financial education by providing workshops or classes in the workplace. As an employer, I developed a series of what we called brown bag lunches on topics of interest and value to our employees. Financial literacy fits right in with this and would be a great topic at virtually any employer in the state. Number 2, and this was our really toughest recommendation, and we still have a lot of questions to answer, but to increase opportunities for low-income Vermonters to save and build assets. And again, we have many questions, and I'll just detail just a very few of the questions. What methods will help low-income Vermonters increase their savings? Do any state policies discourage savings? Are there proven ways to encourage adults to increase asset building? And what have other states done to increase asset building? In our recommendation, and the overall recommendation of the task force, is a strong recommendation to create a Vermont Financial Literacy Commission that hopefully will be created in the not-too-distant future that can answer some of these questions and many more questions that are of vital interest to the success of low-income Vermonters. And finally, our last recommendation, increase the percentage of Vermont employees who are saving for retirement. Many Vermonters do not have access to a payroll deductible retirement plan. I just turned 65 years old, I've retired twice, and I still contribute to the company 403B plan. Most Vermont citizens should have that opportunity. We also know that many individuals are not saving for retirement or not saving enough. We recommend that all Vermont employers currently offering defined contribution plans consider adding auto-enrollment and auto-escalation features to their plan. We recommend that Vermont employers who are not currently offering defined contribution plans considering adding a plan or taking advantage of the U.S. Department of Treasury's My IRA program. And lastly, we recommend that the commission, which we hope will be created, should review the forthcoming findings of the Public Retirement Study Commission that was created by the Vermont legislature in 2014. So that's it. There are 13 recommendations, a lot for all of you to digest. I'd like to turn the program now quickly back to John to present the overall task force recommendation and some current steps.
Great. Thank you. So prior to my reviewing the 13th recommendation, I really want to thank all the members of the task force and express my sincere appreciation and thanks for their dedication and service and hard work. I think pretty much all of them spent at least 17 hours in a variety of different meetings from June to November. Special thanks to our 3 committee chairs, to Bob and Linda and Scott. Many thanks for your leadership, your dedication, your focus, and keeping this going, and I think getting to some really interesting recommendations. And all of the task force members donated one of life's most precious commodities, time. Time's very hard, and their time was dedicated to helping Vermonters increase their financial literacy, and we greatly appreciate them. Many of them are here in the audience today, and I would like to just take a second to go through the list of people who served on what committees. And serving with Linda on the K12 Committee was Kevin Christie, and I don't think Coach is here today, but he's a representative of the Vermont State Legislature, a member of the House Education Committee, and we really liked having him on the committee because he was also a chair of the Hartford School District Board, so he was kind of our school board member. John Fisher, I don't believe John is here, is the Deputy Secretary from the Vermont Agency of Education. Dan French, who could not attend, is a superintendent of the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union. Keith Garrett, who I know is here, is a recently retired principal of the U32 Middle and High School. Lisa Helm is here somewhere. Oh, there you are, Lisa, who's the Director of Financial Literacy and Communications of the Vermont State Treasurer's Office. Juliet Longchamp is right there, who is the Director of Professional Programs for Vermont NEA. And Art Wolf is over there, Arts and Associate Professor of the University of Vermont, and has been very involved, probably one of the leaders in trying to do teacher training in the state in this topic, as president of the Vermont Council of Economic Education. Working with Scott on the college committee was Kelly Beckwith. Kelly back there, who's the director of the Academic Support Center at Castleton State College. Pam Chisholm, who could not be here today, is the Dean of Enrollment Services at the Community College of Vermont. David Provost, who's right over there, is the Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration at Champlain College. John Ryan back there is the Director of Institutional Research at the University of Vermont. On the Adult Committee, we had Paul Dragon, who could not attend today, who's the Chief Administrator at the Office of Economic Opportunity in the Department for Children and Families at the Vermont Agency of Human Services. Lisa Falcone, Lisa's here, is the Working Bridges Program Director for the United Way of Chittenden County. Sue Leonard, who could not be here, is the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of New England Federal Credit Union. Mary Niebling, who also had a conflict, is the Director of the Community Economic Development of the Capstone Community Action Group. Marty Reed's right here, and Marty is the State Librarian for the Vermont Department of Libraries, and Sean Woodruff, who's back there, is the Senior Vice President and Chief People Officer of the National Life Group. So I'd like to thank all of them. So when the task force got together, we've been trying to figure out how do we make sure that this isn't a one-day event, that this doesn't become yet another task force report that gathers dust on somebody's bookshelf. And one way to make sure that these things move forward is for all of us, all the committee members, to do what we can to make these items actually get implemented. But the task force thought that we should have a diverse group of citizens that are appointed at the state level who meet on a regular basis to discuss ways of increasing the personal financial literacy of all of Vermont citizens, and who make formal recommendations on how to achieve these goals. And other states have done this. Historically, The governor and the legislature of the state have created a variety of standing commissions and committees focused on topics that have been deemed by Vermont to be of critical importance to all Vermonters. And examples are women's rights, the environment, aging, substance abuse, healthcare, criminal justice, disabilities, housing, economic development. The committee, the task force, believes that financial literacy is a topic worthy of similar focus by the state of Vermont and should have a standing committee. So to ensure that the issues of financial literacy and financial capability continue to receive the attention they deserve, not just today, but in the future, we recommend that Vermont establishes a financial literacy commission. And our thought is that the committee would have representation from business, education, government, and nonprofit entities. And we ask the governor, the legislature, the treasurer to investigate the feasibility of creating such a commission. The mission of this commission should be to identify ways of equipping Vermonters with the knowledge and skills that they need to have a lifetime of financial well-being. The commission would be expected to make policy recommendations, issue regular progress reports, and finally raise the awareness of these issues and frankly how to solve these issues or these problems. So there are, we thought, 4 steps you could take right now. We've asked for 13, but we think there are 4 that could move quicker than the other 9 remaining recommendations. One is establish the Financial Literacy Commission. That could be done very quickly, either by legislation or by an executive order of the governor. 2, update Vermont's K-12 educational standards as they relate to personal finance. Let's bring those standards up to the 21st century where they belong. 3, figure out ways to use the internet to deliver this information to various stakeholders to help them successfully educate our citizenry. So how do we deliver this information to K-12 educators, to college administrators, to employers, to community leaders, to students, to adults looking for help, advice, for guidance. And then lastly, establishing these financial literacy grants for K-12 schools and supervisory unions so that we can that are interested in bringing personal finance into their classrooms. So our last speaker today is a great advocate and ally regarding the importance of increasing Vermont's financial literacy. I would like to turn the podium over to Vermont State Treasurer Beth Pierce, but before I do that, I want to thank her personally for her role, her leadership role in Vermont with regard to personal finance education during her time as treasurer. So thank you, Beth.
Thank you. I won't keep you too long today, and but I have to first start off with I have no idea who Kim Kardashian is. That I have no idea. Maybe it's a generational thing. I have no idea who you're talking about. So hey, I guess I don't get out enough. But what can I say? First, I want to say thank you very much to Champlain College. It's a wonderful school. This building, by the way, is so energy efficient, and I know that it's a very progressive school. You've done a great job. I want to say thank you very much for Champlain College. Thank you very much for John for his leadership in financial literacy. And I really want to say thank you, Bob, and thank you. Thank you all for Linda and Scott for what you've done in terms of this committee and all the work that you've done. And I also have to point out, Lisa, raise your hand for just a second. Lisa is my Director of Financial Literacy in our office, and she's been in that role since 2007, was it? Time passes, but it really, you've done a fantastic job, and I really want to thank you for your leadership as well. You know, there was a theme in here, and the theme was about financial literacy leads to a more prosperous economy and a stronger Vermont. And that theme is very, very important to me. You know, I look at financial literacy in a line that you just used. A President's Council a few years back said that financial literacy is about a lifetime of financial well-being. That's what I want for my children. I'm old enough to say that's what I want for my grandchildren. That's what I want for every single citizen in Vermont. Everyone should have the opportunity for a lifetime of financial well-being. Now, I work with folks, our office deals with 47,000 retirees or active employees who someday be retired in the state, the teachers, and the municipal system. And we get to counsel those folks. And we also, Lisa's done a great program called the Golden Years, and a program that we do for older folks. And those folks worry. They worry about, will Social Security be there for them? They worry whether or not they're going to have adequate savings in retirement. And we try to help them at that point. And we can help them at that point in terms of some of the choices they make. But when you're at that point, it's a little hard to get to play catch up. You really need to do that at the kindergarten level. You need to do that through high school. You need to do that through college. You need that whole range of programs. And what I've loved about this committee is you've been able to pull together suggestions and recommendations all the way through a lifetime of financial well-being. And for me, that's the critical point. You got to start early. You've got to start working together and make that happen. I worry about the economy in this state. Every day we talk about issues and we work that through. If you have enough income in retirement, and you can buy goods and services, you now are creating jobs. You're out there buying services. You're an economic generator. So financial literacy is not just about what's good for the individual, which I want, as I said, I want it for my children, I want it for my grandchildren, I want it for every citizen, but it's also good for the economy of Vermont. So it's about partnership, it's about collaboration. This committee has been about that. This committee's been about hard work, collaborative work. That's what we do well in Vermont. And I'm hopeful that as we bring these recommendations forward to the legislature, to our office, to VSAC, and to all the various folks that participate in this, that we can get this done. So thank you very much for your work. Thank you, John. Thank you, folks, very much for all you've done. We do this all for Vermont and for every single citizen in Vermont to have that lifetime of financial well-being. Thank you very, very much.